My name is Ali Lee, and this is going to be my sheep brain dissection. So starting off, we're going to see the spinal cord, which is resting on the pan. It is a long cylinder of nervous tissue which extends from the medulla to the first lumbar vertebrae and is like the information highway for communication between the brain and the rest of the body. So the medulla is going to be on this side, like right around this area, and this is the spinal cord, and this is where it would lead into the rest of the body. So we notice that the brain has two halves or hemispheres. We also see the difference between the cerebrum and the cerebellum. The cerebellum is going to be right here, and this is going to be like the cerebrum area. The cerebellum is the structure that receives information from sensory systems such as the spinal cord and other parts of the brain, and then regulates motor movements. It also coordinates voluntary movements such as like posture, balance, coordination, speech, which results in smooth and balanced muscular activity. The cerebrum as a whole contains the whole front part of the brain and has a right and a left hemisphere. The sheep brain itself does not have a frontal lobe, but in humans, the frontal lobe performs higher functions that sets us apart from other animals, such as the interpretation of touch, vision, hearing, as well as speech, reasoning, emotions, learning, and fine control of movement. So I'm going to turn the brain over now, and we're going to see, let me grab my little probe here. We can see the medulla again, and this is the pons area, like right around here we have the pons, and the midbrain is going to be right here in this area, middle brain. Optic chiasm also right in this area, and then the olfactory bulbs right here. This would be where the face of the sheep is. But yeah, so the medulla is going to be responsible for regulating a couple of different basic functions of the ANS, such as respiration, cardiac function, vasodilation, and reflexes like vomiting, coughing, sneezing, and swallowing. The pons deals more with relaying signals from the forebrain to the cerebellum, primarily dealing with sleep, respiration, swallowing, bladder control, what else? Hearing, equilibrium, taste, eye movement, facial expressions, facial sensation, and posture. The midbrain here is like a portion of the central nervous system that deals with vision, hearing, motor control, sleep and wake cycles, arousal, and temperature regulation. The optic chiasm allows the visual cortex to receive the same hemispheric visual field from both of the eyes, which again is going to be this front. Well, the optic chiasm is right here, but this is kind of where the face would be. So yeah. Oh yeah, and the olfactory bulbs. That is what transmits the smell stimulus from the nose to the brain and has one source of sensory input and one of output. Okay, so I'm going to grab my scalpel, and I'm going to slice through the brain kind of along the center, starting at the cerebrum, and work my way down to the spinal cord through the medulla and the pons. and I'm going to be dissecting it sagittally. Ooh, that is very soft tissue to say. Ooh. Wow. Okay. So now I have a sagittal view of the brain, and I'm going to separate the two halves of the brain and lay them with the inside facing up, and this gives us a sagittal view. So we notice right here, I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing at. This is the arbor vitae right above the spinal cord right here. So here we have the arbor vitae, and that is responsible for bringing sensory and motor information to and from the cerebellum. And if we look closer inside the cerebellum, then we see the branching of the lighter tissue surrounded by the darker tissue, and the branching is like white matter, and white matter is made up of nerve axons, and the nerve axons primarily carry information. The darker tissue here around the white tissue that's like branching out is going to be gray matter, and the gray matter is kind of like a collection of nerve cell bodies. The gray matter includes regions of the brain involved in muscle control and sensory perception, such as seeing, hearing, memory, emotion, speech, decision making, and self-control. What else do we have here? So the I wanted to take some time to look for the corpus callosum, and that's basically what connects the two hemispheres here. So I want to say that right in this area here, I don't know if I can separate it a little bit. Ooh. Yes. Ooh. Sorry, kind of got a little bit of a weak stomach. So it's interesting, all through here, it's got that strange feel to it. So yeah, that's the corpus callosum, and right in here, it's like a thick bundle of nerve fibers, and this is what connects the two hemispheres of the brain, which ensures that they can communicate with each other back and forth and signals to each other. And then right above the corpus callosum are the ventricles. The ventricles are what contain, produce, and transport cerebrospinal fluid, and the cerebrospinal fluid essentially bathes the central nervous system and provides physical support and buoyancy for the brain. So Right below that, we notice the fornix, which the primary role of the fornix is to transmit information from the hippocampus to the mammillary bodies and to the anterior nuclei of the thalamus. So yes, we have the fornix. It's like all right in this little pocket right here. It's going to be the corpus callosum, the ventricles, and the fornix. Kind of have to separate it a little bit to see it better, but I have these little pins. I don't know if I should use them to identify more of what we're looking at here. So I think now I want to kind of return to the dorsal view of the brain if possible, and I want to be able to identify the frontal lobe, which is going to be right in this area. The frontal lobe, even though it's not really as prominent in the sheep brain as it is in a human brain. But yeah, we have the frontal lobe, and then we have the occipital lobe, which is going to be back here, and then the longitudinal fissure, which is going to be right around this area in the middle. And also I wanted to kind of try to identify the sulci and the gyri. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The gyri would just be like, I believe that the sulci rather would be the lines, the folds, and the gyri would be like in between all the sulci. There's a lot. All over the brain, there's gyri and sulci, kind of, but it's more on top where the cerebrum and all of that good stuff is. So, the frontal lobes, like I said earlier, are more involved in motor function, problem solving, spontaneity, memory, language, initiation, judgment, impulse control, and social and sexual behavior. If we look at the parietal lobes, these also have multiple different functions. It is the primary cortex for somatic sensation, the sense of touch and limb position, and it associates somosensatory, visual, and auditory activity for the analysis of space and the transmission of spatial information to the motor system. The occipital lobe is primarily responsible for the function of vision. The longitudinal fissures, essential purpose is to separate the brain into two different hemispheres, which is left and right. So yeah, it's like basically right along the middle. And then the folding of the cerebral cortex right here, the folds, and then the spaces in between the folds, that's basically like the gyri and the sulci, and that separates brain regions and increases the brain surface area and the cognitive ability. The gyri and the sulci form boundaries within and between the lobes of the brain and divide it into two hemispheres. Yes. So